The new tariffs announced by Washington and Beijing this week marks a major deterioration in relations between the two countries, with one expert warning there is a more realistic possibility of turning this trade war into a real war if relations continue to sour. The Trump administration recently imposed a tariff start rate of 10% on about $200 billion worth of Chinese imports. The increase will go into effect next week but will increment by 25% at the beginning of next year, and perhaps increase even further on an additional $267 billion worth of imports. China hit back at the United States on Tuesday, announcing it would impose tariffs on up to $60 million worth of U.S. goods. Mr. Trump has repeatedly criticized what he considers unfair trade practices with China, since even before he became U.S. president. The Republican is convinced it hurts U.S. manufacturing, and has said time and time again on the stump and on Twitter that the U.S. must do more to tackle them. In an exclusive interview with Express.co.uk, Francesco Mosconi, professor of business economics at Brunel University London, explains how the U.S.-China relationship has turned into a trade war. Mr. Mosconi said, in the last decades, the two superpower economies have relied on and exploited the globalization for boosting their economic growth. U.S.-China trade war. The new tariffs announced this week marks a major deterioration. Image, Getty. As the trade war is escalating, the future of the entire world economy is in danger given that all economies are interconnected, with a more realistic possibility of turning this trade war into a real war. Francesco Mosconi. While the Chinese have been confident that the U.S. would encourage free trade, the Americans were hoping that the economic liberalization in China would have led to political liberalization as well, taking everyone by surprise. Such expectations ended this year when Mr. Trump announced in a tweet its protectionist policy in China moved towards a monocratic system, allowing Xi Jinping to govern for life. He added, as the trade war is escalating, the future of the entire world economy is in danger given that all economies are interconnected, with a more realistic possibility of turning this trade war into a real war. The deterioration of the relationship between China and the U.S. may accelerate China's plan to conquer the South China Sea, putting an end to the American hegemony in a strategic geographical area where transits the most important maritime trade routes. U.S.-China trade war. Mr. Trump's decision to take on China could lead to adverse effects for consumers. Image, Getty. More than 5,000 U.S. goods will be affected, including meat, nuts, alcoholic drinks, chemicals, clothes, machinery, furniture and auto parts. The White House warned Monday that it would respond to any retaliation from Beijing with yet more tariffs on roughly $267 billion of Chinese exports. According to the professor, the victims of the trade war will be consumers, who will end up paying a higher price for all the products coming from abroad. Global markets fear sparked as China warns difficult to keep economy stable. U.S.-China trade war. More than 5,000 U.S. goods will be affected. Image, Getty. He said, Americans will pay a higher price for consumer goods such as handbags, electronic products and household articles. This may cause an increase in inflation, given that American consumers will face higher prices on daily necessities, ultimately eroding their disposable income. Furthermore, China's reaction of imposing tariffs on $60 billion of U.S. products witnessed the variety of tools that Beijing has, including devaluation of yuan and possible boycott of foreign products, to harm American interests in China. An example of this is American smartphones such as iPhones, which are produced in China. According to Mr. Mosconi, history shows there are no winners in a trade war. In 2002, the George W. Bush administration placed tariffs on imports of certain steel products, which led to a significant decline in the U.S. gross domestic product (GDP), with around 200,000 jobs lost. Such a process is called protectionism, where restrictions are made to boost your country's industry, and shield it from foreign competition. A 2003 study by the Peterson Institute for International Economics estimated that the tariffs may have temporarily increased steel industry employment by around 3,500 workers, but at a cost to consumers of around $400,000 per job. A protectionist policy also increases frauds as instruments to circumvent increase in tariffs, which are very difficult to spot at the expenses of the fiscal revenues such as taxes, fees, products and exploitation of the country. U.S.-China trade war. China hit back at the United States on Tuesday. Image, Getty. Free trade is the opposite of protectionism and is great for companies trying to cut costs, and helps drive prices down and boost the world economy. Professor Mosconi said, although protectionist policies do not benefit society per se, I believe that some forms of control on the inflows of goods based on environmental sustainability and protection of human rights of workers are needed for a sustainable and fair economic growth. No one knows how the U.S.-China trade war is going to end, but Mr. Trump's decision to take on China could lead to adverse effects for consumers worldwide. But as Mr. Mosconi said, history has shown a financial battle between the world's two biggest economies doesn't look good for anyone.